everybody, welcome to Raising Vibrations with myself, Simon. Today everyone, I'm going to be sharing with you some of my insights and some of my recent thoughts regarding the Saturn return, and also sharing with you a little bit about my perspective on how I interpret karma, how I look at a birth chart in the sense of like the model that exists within my head, and also reflecting back to you a little bit about how I actually interact with the idea of how we experience our lives in a sort of third dimensional, fifth dimensional space, and how I see the birth chart through that perspective. And finally, how I see the deep spiritual practice that it is that I use to navigate my way through this existence and the matrix of this world that it is that we live in. So I really hope that that sounds interesting to you and that you feel like this is worth your time, and that you're going to learn something out of this experience today, because that's primarily what it is that I'm sharing with everybody in this sense. Okay, so I'm going to begin a little bit with some announcements. Actually, I wanted to let everyone know that within the next couple of weeks, I will have the membership on Raising Vibrations website available. And I'm in the process of putting together loads and loads of stuff that will be accessible to yourself if you feel that you want to participate in becoming a member to Raising Vibrations community, and all the type of content that I will specifically create for you as a member. Things that I will be absolutely creating is a deep spiritual reflection upon the new and full moon reports that I write. This will be a deeper analysis than the one that I used to write, and what I'll be sharing on YouTube, of course. It doesn't mean that I won't be doing these on YouTube. I still will be, absolutely. However, they will be a lot more intensified, and those will be 2 a month. And I'll also be offering a teaching that you will have available to you for about an hour or so every single month as well. So there's 3 pieces of very large content, and some other extra information and stuff, access to the library as well that I have, or that I've collected over the various workshops that I've done. And you can also have access to, communicating with me on the Facebook group, and really asking questions about certain things that you wish to do. So the membership is really something I'm truly excited about, because it's a service to you in a way where you get to learn loads and loads of stuff. You get to be able to have deep reflections upon your new and full moon reports, and at the same time you can also share and interact with everybody else in the actual Raising Vibrations community. So that's really exciting. I haven't decided a price on it, maybe like $24 or something a month, and I feel like through that process there will be quite a lot of work and information that will come through to you. The other thing that I do want to share with you is that in terms of my own process and where I am right now, I'm busy working really hard on crafting the nature of my YouTube channel, and specifically putting it in a way where you as a soul can actually get an incredible amount of wealth from me regarding this actual channel itself. So I'm building it very slowly, but I'm making sure that I'm basically putting in stuff for you to be able to understand deeper concepts about the nature of the archetypes. And so that when you're looking at your astrology and you're really trying to understand the nature of it, on one level, I'm hoping that you can allow some clarity to formulate itself through, and also recognize the individuation process that is so important when understanding your relationship to your consciousness using the birth chart itself, because that's what it is. The birth chart is an opportunity for you to reflect back on deep aspects within yourself that you can then obviously heal through, etc. So that's what I want to be teaching through this channel, and of course I'm super excited to be sharing it for free in that way. That's my devotion, as well as the new and full moon reports and whatever else random stuff that I do along the road. So I'm stepping into this new process of mine. I've been doing this for a year now, and it's really picked up, and it's really started to reflect back to me that this is something of value to myself and of course to you as well. So I just wanted to share with you where my heart is regarding that, and I really hope that you enjoy this channel as it grows, because it is absolutely going to grow in that way. Okay, so what are we dealing with here when we're trying to understand a Saturn return? In the links, or in the description below, always get ahead of myself there, there will be a link to an article on Saturn return, and I feel that's really, really important to read alongside this video if you're generally wanting to truly understand the nature of what it means, at least. So go ahead and read that as well as watch this video, and I'll make sure that they are linked together. Okay, so the first thing that we have to recognize when you're trying to understand your Saturn return, you have to recognize that Saturn in itself, as an archetype relative to this third dimensional reality, is exactly that. It is the cocoon, it is the shell, it is the foundation, it is the essential boundary that we as souls use to carry us through time and space. If you look very carefully at the zodiac, you'll notice that Pisces or 12th house and Capricorn sits like that, and they actually sextile each other. And the concept of time and space is the archetype of space, Neptune, time, Capricorn. And Capricorn, or Saturn, as it were, or 10th house, that archetype in itself reveals to us how we use the mode or the modality or the vehicle to travel through space and understand the deeper connection that we have to the cosmos and to ourselves and overall to our consciousness and our stories that we, of course, hold and attach ourselves to live through and to work through and to evolve through. Okay, so Saturn, Capricorn, 10th house as a definition in terms of this conversation is the circle. It's not the circle, it's the definition, the carapace, it's the body, it's the bones, it's the skin of yourself, it's the shell, it's the bark around the tree. Okay. Now, inside of that archetype in itself is the reflection that stimulates the definition, and that is, of course, Cancer, the moon, identity, 4th house, the roots. So you can easily identify with this imagery by understanding that the roots of your home, or the roots of where you belong in your community, is a reflection of the nature of your definition. Okay? And something like somebody that is born and raised in Spain, for instance, like say Barcelona, outer definition and belief structures and such will be very different to somebody, say for instance, born in California, that is raised in those cultural norms versus, of course, Spanish cultural norms. And so the identity and home is the Cancer archetype, and what that Cancer archetype reflects is the outward reality. Okay? So it's really important to firstly acknowledge the fact that when we are dealing with Capricorn, we are also dealing with Cancer, and the inner and outer reflection, the inside of ourselves and how that reflects outwardly, how the outside reflects inwardly. Okay, so that's the first thing we've got to recognize when we're trying to deepen our sense of awareness and our relationship to consciousness and what is happening to us when we go through a Saturn return. Capricorn definition, the identity, okay, and how we represent that. Capricorn then also, through that process, correlates to the crystallization of something, the formation of something, the actual forming of the process, the crystallization of it. And so, as we get born and we separate from the womb and we begin our journey, we spend 28 years of our lives going through this entire cycle, okay? And at 29, what happens, or 28, what happens is that Saturn returns to its original place, and it then draws you back home. Okay, so you separate and you spend 28 years of your life discovering, 28 years of your life going around doing whatever it is that you're doing and crystallizing the nature of your karma, crystallizing the nature of identity, crystallizing the nature of ego, okay, what your perceptions of the world are, what your truths are, and so on and so forth. How you create a world with those truths and so on and so forth. How that becomes a definition. Okay? You're following me so far. Now, in terms of Saturn's formation of an identity from 0 to 28 degrees, you have 3 major points. Okay? You have the 7 at the age of 7, you're at the age of 14, and you have the age of 21. Now, between 0 and 7, the child, as it were, is still growing, and the function of the body is not centered, it's not grounded. which is why up until the age of 7, children are very much in a way of, yeah, they know their relationship to the environment and such, but they're not concretely aware of the gravity of why it is that they are here. And you'll know within your own life, at 7 years old, you start to become a little bit aware of your limitations. You become a little bit more grounded in this three-dimensional reality. You start to understand yourself a little bit deeper. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that a 7-year-old has the consciousness to understand itself in the depth that you have post 28, but there is a sense of really being able to connect with your environment and recognize that there is something here, and you start to become more matured in that process. There's a reflection of age, okay? So 7 years is the first square and the formation of ego. Why is it ego? Why is formation of ego? Firstly, what is ego? So for me, and the truth that it is that I hold in the space that it is that I hold for ego, is simply a reflection of soul's journey, okay? It's a reflection of soul's journey. Now, many of us recognize that the reason why we're on this planet is because we have a separating desire that brings us to this plane to exist through. Now, we need a vehicle for us to understand that desire, so therefore we create ego. Ego, my name is Simon. In this particular instance, I wanted to understand the desire relative to my YouTube channel, so therefore I created Raising Vibrations. Raising Vibrations is the vehicle and the name, the identity, the ego. Does it make sense? Cancer, 4th house moon, polarity point, Capricorn. Capricorn, Cancer, ego, definition of ego. Do you see how this works? Okay. So at Saturn's point, it's at the age of 7, there is a fusing of the first crystallization of ego relative to 7 years worth of life. Okay. Of course, then we reach the opposition, at the 14 degree, and this will be a natural progress. I don't care what it is or what truth it is out there. This is natural law. Something that naturally opposes something else will have a specific time frame. Therefore, you will always go through your Saturn opposition at the age of 14, because it takes that long to get from this place to that place. Okay, 7 years. So therefore, and I've heard people talk about different maturities happening at certain times, and it's like, well, yes, that's the case. However, the primary fusing and crystallization of ego manifests at 14, 7, and 21. And I'm sure all of you at some point in your lives have had that experience. At 7 years old, you know, you kind of threw away some of your baby charm, and you started to grow up a little bit more, and wanted to maybe interact with people. And then at the age of 14, I'm sure all parents must love this period of time. It's that process of going, I now see myself in opposition to authority. Because again, Capricorn represents that conditioning, right? So now all of a sudden, when Saturn hits 14 years old, or you hit 14 years old, you start to become aware of your separation from the mother-father conditioning. And this is how it manifests through our 3D world and our consciousness and our relationship to consciousness and those definitions, is that we go through, this period of time of becoming teenagers now, of course. And we start to socialize. We may be starting to open up a little bit more. We're wanting to be a little bit more sort of social in the way that we interact with people. We throw away the dolls and we go, I'm done with the kids stuff now. I'm now into sort of pre-adulthood, right? And when I say pre, I mean really pretty pre. But there is a necessity for that to take place. So of course, this crystallization of ego manifests itself as an opposition from authority. And so this is why there will always be that process of rebelling against parents, rebelling against authority, going into that deep depression in some way, shape or form, but really it's just a deep reflection. So Saturn opposition, interesting time, the crystallization of ego. Now you get to the 21 degrees and of course, or the 21 years, and Saturn hits its 3rd quarter square. And this is a crisis, or should I say a crisis in consciousness, where there is a necessity for liberation to take place. We throw off the old and we move into a new direction. We now want to individuate ourselves. Okay? And think about what happened at the age of 21 and that individuation process that took place. You're throwing off the conditioning, the expectations, and so on and so forth. And of course, that will naturally happen within our lives. And again, the assimilation of ego takes place, the crystallization of it. And by this time, you would have started to assimilate truths about what you think perception of reality is about. And of course, you will assimilate it within to yourself, and your karma will become crystallized. Now, 28, Saturn comes around, and you must remember that gravity is associated with Saturn. Saturn and gravity is what Saturn is, gravity. It's the slowness that moves, and that's why you observe your reality like this. Any astrology can tell you that if they want to really, really show the skill of themselves in a safe way, you talk about Saturn. Because Saturn is what a person will be experiencing in their direct reality, because it's the slowest energy movement. Not Pluto and Uranus and Neptune in the sense of slow around the zodiac, but it's drawing energy in, it's slowing it down, it's asking you to pay attention. And again, the reason why Saturn does this is because that is the center of gravity. And of course, again, Saturn will also reveal to us the limitation that we have on this 3D dimensional realm. So, Saturn returns at 28, and what happens is it asks you to come home. You are asked to come home and deeply reflect. The deep reflection that is taking place in your life is to assimilate and allow for that identity that you've basically crystallized over 28 years of growth to come into fruition, and to let go of all of the identities that it is that you believe and hold to be true, and you actually fracture the ego and allow for a new ego to manifest itself. So during that process, that fracturing of that ego, that essential depression or slowness or heaviness that you experience between the ages of 28 and 30 and such, is because there is a desire from Saturn's return to come home and say, slow down, take it easy. You are not here to create, you're here to reflect. You're here to take everything one day at a time. You're here to clutter out everything that is not working for you and bring into yourself a new identity, so that when you catapult yourself into your next 29 years of existence, you move into the uncrystallizing of old patterns and the formation of newer ones that are reflective of a higher vibrational state. So that's what I encourage you to understand about your Saturn return, that this is a process of coming home within self. This is a process of slowing down. This is a process of focusing the gravity on you. This is the process of allowing yourself to just take time out of your life and to not manifest in the way that you would like to just go out into the distance and create. It's about building. It's about reconstruction. It's about laying out plans, etc., and really bringing yourself home, so that when your Saturn return ends and that heaviness dissipates, you actually find yourself in a new direction. So everyone, in this part over here, this is what I wanted to show you regarding the way that I see the astrological charts and understand the nature of what soul is, and how we as soul move through time and space, and how the process of spiritual reflection and the necessity for the evolution through the emotional body works, okay? And how our karma gets reflected to us. So what I want to do firstly is illustrate to you the importance of recognizing the cross that we all bear. And the cross, to me, symbolized by the cardinal cross, which is interesting. So in the two-dimensional birth chart that you have, you've got Aries over here, you've got Cancer over there, you've got Libra over there, and you've got Capricorn there, okay? And then what you have here is just that square that takes place between Aries and Capricorn and Libra, and Libra and of course Cancer. Now we also have, you can substitute these places for Scorpio and Taurus and Aquarius and Leo, and they all square each other as well. So you can see that there's many squares that take place as well. Now, in this diagram, I want to show you how there is the square that reflects the time, okay? And there is a square that reflects the space that is created, and they interface with each other, okay? As you can see there, okay? And the square and the circle reflects to us such a beautiful understanding about the nature of law of one, in this particular instance taught by Walter Russell, and the relationship that space or consciousness operates as the circle, and the natural field or matrix that gets created through the circle is the square. Okay, this is the box. This can be perceived as Saturn, as it were. All right. And then if you look at the birth chart itself, you can see that that is Aries, that is Taurus, that's Gemini, that's Cancer. You know, the houses. These are the houses. Yep. Can you see that process? Okay. So again, this is the 12th house, as it were. Okay. 11th house, 10th house, 9th house over there, 8th house, 7th house, 7th house here, sorry, 6th house, 5th house, 4th house, 3rd house, 2nd house, 1st house. And this is a 3D dimensional diagram in that way. So you have to imagine that these spaces that are existing there is not flat. Of course, it's moving in that fifth dimensional reality. Okay, and that is the space. That is your consciousness interacting through the cube in which we are existing in, and that can be perceived as Saturn, or the matrix that we are in. Okay, so this is a really interesting thing. So you have your soul in front, and this is your light. This is your expression of light. Okay, and you radiate that light. And so when you have planets, for instance, in those spaces, what intrinsically happens is that light that gets radiated, when it hits a planetary archetype in your birth chart, obviously the planetary archetype itself reflects back to you whatever that karma is. So the way I see the birth chart in terms of consciousness and our stories and how we understand how to heal past our stories is where our symbols are in our charts will naturally reflect to us karma that it is that we have crystallized in our lives. In other words, aspects or dimensions of reality that are formed based on an experience. And that formation that we've experienced is what is then sitting in these dimensions of space. Okay? All right, does this make sense? So whenever you, like, say for instance, you've got Pluto in the 10th house and my light's getting shone through here in that space of the 10th house. Of course, because there's Pluto there and there's crystallized karma associated with it, when it hits it, it's going to reflect back to me, the center, what that story is about. And in our lives, people show up with different karmic patterns that they carry within themselves that actually operate in some way, shape, or form as a reflection of those karmic stories that we have. That's why relationships are the way that they are. Karma mates, twin flames, etc. They all reflect back to us aspects of ourselves. And if you really are interested in looking at the synastry and relationship archetypes, you'll notice that there's actually quite a big, a signature. You'll always notice that there will be incredible similarities. And it's because other people hold space for us to understand the nature of their consciousness as they are a reflection to us of that consciousness that we have in ourselves. Now, we project that outwardly, and then what comes back to us is a reflection of that projection. And then we get to understand the nature of ourselves through that process. Does that make sense? So to me, this is what the birth chart is and how consciousness is interacting with those processes. And where you have stories and such, that's where that stuff comes from. Okay? So another way that I would like to illustrate this, and if you look at this chart over here, you've got the center, and then you've got all these different dimensions of space. Okay, so you've got 9th house, philosophy, etc., dimension of space that correlates to that, and so on and so forth. 12th house, culmination, new beginnings, and so on. Now, to understand it, the 5th dimension height and 6th dimension width is this reality in which we are moving into. So you must have heard ascension as a process, or the understanding of quantum expansion, and Uranus does this in that way as well. That's why I call Uranus the fracturing archetype, as Jeffrey Wolf Green taught about it, because it's realities that are being presented to you in spaces that are not in linear format. And the reason why that's the case is because, of course, Uranus exists outside the field of Saturn, and so therefore we can't assimilate Uranian energy in a way through the third dimensional state of consciousness, which is Saturn, right? The cube, the three-dimensional eye, the senses. So the brain wants to put it in a linear, logical, sequential order, and yet Uranus is coming along and saying, well, I'm just giving you aspects of reality that are existing, and you've just got to kind of connect the dots. So to understand this process of fifth dimension, you've got the 0 point here, and then these different dimensions are interacting in different ways. And so this can be perceived as soul. So many timelines, as I talk about, I call these timelines, okay, different times in which you've experienced the nature of reality and creation, and the crystallization of that reality is where you are shining your light, and that crystallization is reflecting back to you that light, just as a crystal is. So when you look at the birth charts and those things, this is the type of imagery you need to understand. Whereas in the fourth dimensional length and the 3D, everything's just in backwards, like, pardon me, not backwards, but moving backwards, moving forwards, and static, right? In that sense. So it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, last week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Whereas in this thing here is just different dimensions of time and space, which is why when you look at birth charts and archetypal structures that exist in birth charts, you can access deep cellular recall of memories within the DNA relative to different time spaces. Because, of course, if you're seeing it in this way, then you're able to access those different time frames, and you're then able to obviously offer deep healing through that process. And that's why I call it Raising Vibrations, fifth dimensional astrology, because that's what we do. We recall aspects of your consciousness that are in different time frames. And of course, that's how we understand that relationship towards karmic patterns and such. Okay, so here's another great example of, again, a way to see the fourth dimensional reality and how we travel through time and space through the senses. And so what you have here is you have this picture of the flat space here. So you've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And if you look into the future, you can really see that tomorrow has got a very broad and clear perspective in what you're going to do. Whereas like weeks in the, like say for instance, like a month from now, it's very like murky. It's like, you're not really sure what's going to happen, but tomorrow there's a sense of like, okay, I've got my day sorted out. So the closer the event is within, in terms of the source, the more broad and awake the perspective is within self. Whereas the further down the line in terms of the future, the same thing is the present. However, if you had to reverse this process and see this as last week Monday, last week Tuesday, last week Wednesday, last week Thursday, last week Friday, last week Saturday, you'll notice that the further the time frame goes backwards, the less you can recall of it. Because this is the fourth density, third dimensional state, okay? Now, as you experience the platform of time through this year, time reflects to you the space in which you exist within. So memory can be perceived as this part of the wall. Okay, now if you look really, really carefully and you look down this line over here and you understand the time frames that exist there, then those emotional connections to those time frames is what's then called the karmic patterns that you exist with, the unconscious emotional attachments, the self-image, the moon, the fourth house. Okay, this is why moon, fourth house, and Cancer reflects the ego structure, because it's a sequence of events that happen through time, Capricorn, because remember Cancer, Capricorn polarities, and that time and space reflect back to you images and experiences. Images and experiences, time frames. Images and experiences, time frames. And so as you go along the time space, as you move through time and space, through your consciousness, the time is reflecting the space. Pisces, Capricorn. Capricorn, sextile Pisces. Okay? So another way that you can see this as well is that, and I talk a lot about the sine wave and the precession of the equinox, of course, but at least the knowledge that we use, or the lens we use to understand this relationship. So for us, humanity has gone through these different waves. So, in one of the videos that I created, I think it was the Natural Zodiac, I showed you the waves in which we experience our years. So this can be perceived as like Aries, and then this is Taurus, and of course then it's Gemini, and then right at the top we have Cancer, the summer solstice. And then of course that becomes the process of Leo, and then Virgo, and then crucifixion in Libra, balance, equality, nullness, zero, crucifixion. And then of course we descend into Scorpio, and we're going to Sag and Capricorn, winter solstice, right? And again, we go up that process, and this is the formation of time that we experience. And then these reflections here can be then perceived as the experiences that are attached to those different time frames. So as an example, I can say to you right now, recall back to me what happened on the 31st of August 2013, or Remind me of a time that happened to you when you had this happen. And you can recall those emotional memories and reflect upon them. And then you can also add the date to the process. Does that make sense? So you are light experiencing itself through space, and then having space and time be the reflection of the soul's journey, as it were. Okay? So that's that picture again. Let's have a look. Okay, so I've already done it. Now, karma. Okay, this is a beautiful explanation of the nature of the crystallization and formation of karma and so on. Okay, forget about the prism of the air, but I'd like to have you use your imagination here in this way and understand that this is a cube in which the nature of time is kept in. And inside that cube is consciousness in that sense, and also a memory, a core memory. Okay? Now, when we are interacting with people, we are interacting through the dimension of time and space. And depending on that interaction, there will always be, when that interaction ends, there will always be a core memory that will be solidified through that experience. Okay? That's why I teach that your ego identity and the collection of experiences are linked. You are a collection of your experiences. That is a reflection of who you are as you act out those experiences. The collection of experiences is a reflection of who you are. Collection of experiences, Cancer, reflection of who you are, Capricorn. Inner and outer. Okay? In mundane astrology, it would be seen as career, Capricorn, Cancer, home. Why? Because in your home you reflect, and in your career you're defined, as it were. Okay? So, now talking about this over here, coming back to this process, each and every single one of us carries with us all of these types of cubes in our consciousness, crystallized formations of identities. And whenever we are sharing or pushing a light onto those areas of our existence, we then have those core memories and emotional reactions reflect back to us. Now, when we have interactions that are positive, those core reflections respond in a way that is very jovial, and we have good excitements about it. We have identities associated with it. When we have negative experiences in that sense, or experiences that are not favorable or unresolved or are not balanced, then we create karma. Karma, in my opinion, based on my understanding of the process of how we move through time and space and what we do, is the reflection of unresolved inequality, where things have not been resolved between an interaction of two people that leaves unresolved emotional reflection. So an example that I was giving to one of my clients today was that we have an interaction, and say, for instance, I treat you really badly. You leave that experience really, really feeling offended and maybe not enjoyable of that experience. And that forces you through that interaction to hold on to maybe a grudge. And that stops you from having a loving relationship to me in that way, because in some way, shape or form, I've created a negative charge in yourself that is not balanced. Now, from my perspective, I can do one of two things. I can completely ignore that process and neglect your own emotional field and such. Or I could be responsible for my actions and reflect upon that process and then engage by saying I'm sorry, which will then naturally create an equilibrium by forcing the other person to interact and either forgive or not forgive, depending on. If you don't forgive in that sense, ultimately you're going to keep that karma with you. If you do forgive, there creates an equilibrium where there's now a state of zero. And there is again the state of balance that was pre the interaction. Therefore, you are a product of crystallized consciousness or crystallized formations in your consciousness that, when interacting with other people and other things, reflect back to you who you are. The more imbalanced states of unresolved emotional patterns exist within your psyche and your consciousness, the more karma you carry. This is why through work like Patricia Walsh and Evolutionary Astrology and people like Mark Jones, for instance, they work with trauma, because there is wounding around core crystallized aspects of our psyche that have not been resolved for whatever reason. And that's why Aquarius in itself will correlate to trauma, because there's a fracturing of that essential cube that contains whatever, or a fracturing of identity that is existing in different pieces. And when we interact with those different pieces by reflecting us, because we are pure light, that reflection comes back to us as not integrated, not holistic, not as one. It is divided. So as you go through this journey of life, you come to understand that what it actually is about is the understanding of healing through your karma by recognizing your fragmentation, trying to create holistic balance within your life, and move through time and space, creating experiences that are ultimately grounded in love. Okay? So I really hope that that actually brought to you a cool sense of understanding about the nature of how I perceive karma in that way, how I see the birth chart, and how I understand the nature of soul moving through time and space, and why to me I love using evolutionary astrology to understand that. I'd like to bring out a birth chart quickly to give you a two-dimensional perspective of the nature of the 3D that we were seeing earlier. So in this person's case, they've got like Leo here, Scorpio there, etc., Pluto here, and they've got these symbols here. Now, from the middle, there's a reflection of light to that moon sign. That moon sign carries crystallized identity structures to it because it's what you've interacted with. When it reflects back to you, you have an understanding of that karma. Therefore, it is your identity. Hence the reason as to why every one of us in some way, shape or form will resonate with our astrology, because we are seeing a reflection of that karma or crystallized formation in our psyche being shown to us. When we interact with it and we create a 0 point, i.e. creating harmonics and balance with it through love and forgiveness and acceptance and understanding, we then create that equilibrium, that 0 point, which then allows us to then not have a positive or negative reaction to it. Now, again, when I say positive or negative, I must remove the idea of duality and recognize that it is what causes more karma or creates no karma at all. Does that make sense? Okay, guys, I really hope that shared something really deep with you. I really hope that you enjoyed that. I'd like to say to you that if you're interested in learning astrology with me, I do have astrology schools running. If you're interested in participating in my membership, please make sure to just send me an email saying you're interested in that. Of course, this will come out within the next couple of weeks. And if you're interested in just having a reading with myself, I also have that available as well at this stage, okay? Other than that, everyone, please hit the like and subscribe button, share this content, and share me some love with regards to some of the comments, what you thought about this. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.